Alrighty, well, it definitely seems like President Donald Trump is about to be buying Canada or acquiring Canada. Now, that could be an over-exaggeration, or it could not be an over-exaggeration. The G7 summit is taking place, I think, sometime this week or next week in Alberta. Well, I guess it would be next week since the week's kind of over. In Alberta. And Trump has announced that he's going to be attending. He's going to be there like real freaking soon. So, of course, the natural, train of thought is he's looking for land to put his golf courses or his Trump towers. But in all seriousness, I don't think he's going to be doing that unless he is. Then that's what I thought all along, just so I could be right. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And if you want to support the channel above and beyond doing that, there is a join button for the memberships link down below and a PayPal link in the description or maybe even in the pinned comment below. Without further ado, let's get into the news. Starting off with EVs. EV plants are shutting down and they're moving to gas powered over in America. That's kind of weird considering Mark Carney's whole elbows up campaign was we're going to double down on vehicle manufacturing in Canada. Whoops.
We have to this point a statement from our colleagues at Radio-Canada. Scott, to give us some of the further detail, what more do we know?
Well, we're seeing that this is a pullback now that we're seeing from big car companies from their electric vehicle production. The Charger Daytona RT is an electric vehicle. They wanted this to be an entry-level muscle car, but electric, if you will. They're pulling that back, and this follows a move that we saw recently just by Honda as far as pulling away from this EV market, with both companies saying that the sales, in effect, have dropped out and they're turning back to muscle cars without kind of guidance from companies and from countries as far as that EV emission and carbon footprint. Now, here's a statement from Stellantis to CBC News saying exactly what's behind this. The production of the Dodge Charger Daytona RT is postponed for the 2026 model year as we continue to assess the effects of the U.S. tariff policies. The Charger's flexible multi-engine platform allows us to focus on the Charger Daytona, that's the gas vehicle, and lean into the new Charger six-pack models that will launch in the second half of the year. Now, according to analysts, the market has dropped out for electric vehicle production. It's not a moneymaker, that more car makers are following where the money is and the demand is, and that's with more gas cars. And we saw the delay of the production line from home.
Hold on a second. Really? So we're supposed to forfeit all these plastic straws and give it up for cardboard straws or paper straws. But meanwhile, you have actual car manufacturers that are going, well, we thought about saving the environment, but it turns out that there's more money to be made in not doing that because people are just going to buy whatever they can afford. It's almost like this entire globalist agenda of, climate change and all that crap. It's not really sticking. It's not really sticking anymore. It feels like we're about to go through a massive manufacturing boom where you're going to have plants in America just pumping out goods after goods. And I think it's going to be really good for us. I really do.
Honda just within the last couple of weeks. And the second shoe to drop here is that Stellantis is making an investment in the U.S. today as well, a $388 million investment in a new Detroit mega hub location. So clearly that is a result, too, of worries about the tariffs and how much more expensive potentially Canadian vehicles will be.
The immediate impact was felt at Stellantis. They shut down production for a couple of weeks. Talk of moving production to the United States. So this is a big blow, and we'll hear, I'm sure, reaction from the city and from workers there a little bit later on.
Every time the government tries to force something down people's throats, it just never freaking works. It never works. I mean, people are going to do what they can afford, and people can't afford EVs because they're just so expensive. They're actually more expensive, the upfront cost, than a gas-powered vehicle. So why would people be paying that much more to save on gas and yada, yada? You know the whole shit. Anyways, I'd love to know your guys' thoughts and comments down below about that story. Next up, you've got Conservative MP, new guy, Jamil Javani, I guess not so new guy, is calling for the end of the temporary foreign workers program. That's his first action as his new role. He's been officially sworn in. Pretty pretty interesting. Cracking down on temporary foreign worker program. Huh. I'd be down for that.
I've been thinking about how I want to approach the job as an MP this time around. And a lot of it, I think, is about, now that I understand a bit better how Ottawa works, trying to pierce what I would describe as the Ottawa bubble more often and more frequently. Over the course of the campaign, when you're knocking on doors and you're talking to people, you have I think a clear sense of how people feel about a lot of different issues. But oddly, when you come to this place, you sometimes encounter a culture here where it's not very clear whether people understand what the common sense priorities are of the average hardworking family. Liberals have been in power here for going on over a decade now, and I think their worldview, their priorities, their approach to important policy issues has shaped the way Ottawa works. You know, and I'll give you a very specific example of that. The issue of immigration, right? So every day I'm knocking on doors and I'm talking to people of all different backgrounds and walks of life about immigration. And there's a pretty clear consensus, even across people with different political views, that immigration levels are just unsustainably high. Anyone who goes to a hospital can see there's not enough beds. Anyone who goes to look for a family doctor can't find one. You go to buy a house, there's not enough of those. You go to find a job, there might not be one of those for you either. And it seems very common sense when you're knocking on doors and you're canvassing and you're talking to people on the street that this is an issue that needs to be tackled. But we are now entering year 10 or 11 of a culture in Ottawa where you cannot even really have a sensible conversation about it. And it really shouldn't be hard. I'll give you an example. I'm canvassing in North Oshawa.
Okay, so he goes on to say that he wants to call an end to temporary foreign worker. We're not going to watch the whole video, but you can see right here, my first action, calling for an end to the temporary foreign workers program. There you go. No more cheap labor programs that take Canadian jobs and suppress wages. And honestly, this is what the Conservatives should have been doing from the get-go. We saw in this election that they kind of pussyfooted around certain topics. Well, we're going to cut back on immigration. We're going to keep doing this instead of just stopping it, like a hard stop. And I think it's because the Conservatives, Pierre's advisors, were afraid of being branded or labeled or called Trump, the Canadian Trump 2.0, Northern Trump, whatever. And he got called that anyways. So he could have said things that people would have really agreed on, or he could have pussyfooted around things where people would have been disappointed that he said certain things and that he didn't say certain things. So ultimately, I feel like there's a bit of a rebranding strategy that the Conservatives need to be doing, and having concrete, like very, very firm stances on these things is going to be the make or break for any upcoming election, whether it's a premature election or whether it's in 4 years from now. That's good. It's not racist. You're not a bad person for realizing that there's too much immigration or immigrants, or we're flooded with the immigration system right now. Like, Canada has always been welcoming of immigrants. I've always been raised that that's fine, and I'm okay with that. A lot of people are, some aren't. That's a whole different story. But most people are pretty much okay with immigration on a smaller scale to fill certain positions, or like trickling in immigrants. But the way that Canada's been going about it is, it's just not sustainable. It's not good. It's not good for our jobs, for our housing, for our economy. We're growing too fast, and we're growing in kind of the wrong ways. We should be growing from birth rates in Canada going up, more incentives, cheaper cost of living for new families to be able to afford to have multiple kids. Our birth rate is on a decline. So the fact that you now have Conservatives, it's not Pierre, but you do have Conservative MPs taking a hard stance on certain things, I think that's really good for the future of the party. Again, that's my opinion, folks. I would absolutely love to know yours. Next up, we're talking about something that's even more controversial than saying no to immigration. You have President Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Breaking. Donald Trump will be coming to Alberta, Canada for the G7. That's right. Turns out that, well, he might be scouting out some. I don't know why I'm just so addicted to calling it that. Maybe it's fun. It's fun to entertain the idea of the 51st state. But let's take a look at the video.
After Prime Minister Mark Carney indicated after his trip down to D.C. that he was looking forward to hosting Donald Trump at Kananaskis, the White House confirmed today that Air Force One will be routing to the Rockies for that high-stakes summit next month. And this is where we're expecting kind of the next frontier on the conversation around tariffs to take place. Obviously, it was a part of the conversations here, but there was no resolution. All of the other G7 nations have come away with it, understanding that they're going to have to take this on one-on-one conversations with the U.S. We do expect that will play out at that high-stakes summit next month in Kananaskis, which Mark Carney is hosting.
And, of course, the finance and central bankers, ministers all...
Remind me to live stream it. I need to live stream that. That's going to be incredible. I mean, Donald Trump and his team are just absolutely going to humiliate people, I think. Not in a Zelensky or South African president kind of way, but in a whole different way where it doesn't even matter if it's in Canada or if it's in freaking Germany or whatever. Like, all eyes are just going to be on the president. Okay, yeah, cool. Canada has a new prime minister, Mark Carney. Wow, he gets to host his first big boy event. Doesn't matter. It's all eyes on Trump. That's like unanimous across the board. Everybody's going to be paying attention to Trump more so than anybody else.
Matt, what did they achieve during those meetings?
Yeah, so the big takeaway, according to Canada's finance minister, is the fact alone that they got a joint communique. That was kind of one of the questions coming into today over what they could actually agree on. So some of the things that they were able to find consensus on: a new call to action to tackle financial crime, some more wording around supporting Ukraine, as well as looking at trying to get at what they're calling low-value shipments, kind of flooding the market from China, places like Shein and Temu. But one of the big question marks here, notable omission from that joint communique, is the fact that trade was only mentioned once and tariffs not at all. So I asked Canada's finance minister specifically, was this just the elephant in the room, or was the trade war addressed head on? Amanda, here's a bit of what he had to say.
So there's no doubt that there's discussion around that policy of tariff by the United States, but I would say there's also a very constructive discussion about what's the way forward that we can adopt and where can we find common ground to tackle other global challenges like we've seen overcapacity, non-market practices, which are affecting our respective economies.
So that sentiment of maintaining common ground is something we should expect to see the Canadian delegation continue into next month. We'll see as well, Amanda, if there's any shift on the language around Ukraine. Notable that in past communiques, they've called Russia's invasion illegal, but what we saw today was not that, just reaffirming support and kind of waiting to see if further sanctions could be levied if no ceasefire is reached.
Oh boy, that's right. We still have a bunch of trade war kind of tariffs in the mix, and now all of a sudden the president of the United States is supposed to show up and everything's going to be fine. I think tensions are going to be really high, and Canada and Canadian politicians are going to try to maybe even go and make a example out of the president, which is probably the worst thing they could do, because every single time somebody or a country thinks they've got a one up on Trump and they've figured it out and we're going to get him. We're going to get him in the gotcha that we've always wanted. It never works. It literally every single time backfires. And not that the president is coming to pick a fight. He's already picked a fight with Canada. He's coming to do his job, and I just don't see how this is going to work in favor of Mark Carney. You've already seen President Trump decide to spend billions of our dollars on a defense system that's joint with America and us. That's wild. That's never been done before. I mean, maybe long time ago, but a president of the United States deals with American things. He doesn't just come out and say, hey, by the way, we're doing this thing and Canada is forcefully involved. Like that just hasn't ever happened. And Mark Carney is getting played by Trump. He's getting played. And all the elbows up voters voted for the opposite. They voted for Carney to literally go, hey, buddy, hey, Buster, stick in your lane, pal. And not once has Mark Carney ever said that. He tried to, in a weird double or triple speak, if that's even possible, in his press conference yesterday, which is covered in the last 2 of my videos, little, clippets of that. But again, he hasn't actually stood up to Trump at all. So now it's different. Now they're going to be on Canadian soil, because before it was Carney at the Oval Office, and then there was the distance between America doing their press conferences in America and Canada doing his press conference in Canada. But now they're going to be under the house, under the dome in Canadian soil. And so it's going to be exciting nonetheless. I hope you stick around for that when it does happen. And somebody down in the comments, remind me when the time comes to do a live stream, and I will absolutely live stream that event if it is even publicly broadcasted live. But that is the end of the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.